If I mulch something with this, I really don't have to come back to it for the rest of the season, right? And the good thing about this stuff is that since it's been rotting, it's already got like a lot of, good sort of natural nature stuff in it. So it's really not going to take much from my soil. It's just Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and thought I'd do a video this evening on a topic one of my viewers brought up. He asked, what are you doing for sources of mulch given that you're working from home and not commuting to work anymore? And to back up a little bit from that question, for those that have watched this channel regularly, I often talk about, my garden's covered with mulch all the time. I keep all the soil in the garden mulched, and the source of mulch, other than using grass clippings from my lawn, which I don't get enough from, is just picking up yard waste from other people's lawns. And I know you're going to ask, doesn't that have weeds? I got a video on that. I'll put a link to it at the end. But I'm not driving back and forth to work right now because, like a lot of people, if you're lucky enough to have that kind of a job, I'm working from home. So the viewer asked, how are you getting mulch? And I am using grass clippings, but I could drive down to the ocean and get seaweed from the shore. You can do that here. You just get the dead seaweed. And you're gonna ask, doesn't it have too much salt? I got a video on that. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. So no, it doesn't. But I don't like the beach where I can gather that sort of thing. I don't like to take too much. I mean, it's part of the natural ecosystem, so I don't like to sort of overexploit that. Also, it's about a 15-minute drive each way, and I don't like wasting the gas on it. If you're using gas to get something, you're paying for it, in my opinion. So I tend to try to use what I can gather really, on site on my property right here. And using grass clippings, I'm not above taking branches off some of my trees, not killing the tree, just taking a branch here or there and just running over it. Like, I've got a lot of trees here, and a lot of my evergreens grow really close together. I mean, I'm looking right over here right now, and I can see about 7 spruce trees about 6 feet high, and they're all within a 4-foot space. Once they get to, sort of a more mature size, they might grow 6, 8, 10 feet apart. And all the trees that are in the middle just die out anyway, naturally. So, the sort of treed area of my property, when I see the younger trees, a lot of times we get a big storm here, it blows down a whole bunch of trees, and then a bunch of young trees grow up out of that, and they'll all be like this far apart. So I'll go and thin those out, whack all the branches off, run over with a lawnmower, and use it on my gardens. And, does the spruce needles acidify the soil and all that sort of stuff? The short answer is no. There's, if you do a search for, do a Google search, just use the word extension, pine needles, soil, or extension, spruce needles, soil, acidify, those key terms. You'll find articles from university extensions, agricultural extensions, explaining why those things, if you just lay them on top of your soil, use them as a mulch on the surface, they don't affect the acidity level of your soil in any appreciable way, especially for something with really well-developed root systems and so on and so forth, as is the case in July, right? It's just around the middle of July now, and all my plants are, they got decent roots. Everything's down 3, 4, 5 inches into the ground sort of thing. The roots are everywhere. And the main goal from this point in the season onward is to avoid having to water the garden. And, sort of the best way to do that, one of the easiest ways to do that, aside from rigging up an elaborate drip irrigation system, which would be quite a project for my garden, given that I've got about 50, the equivalent of 50 4x8 beds in there. That would be a bit onerous of a task. It makes so much more sense for me to just mulch everything, and that way you get more than one thing out of the effort. You get, you're improving your soil, you're keeping the organisms in the soil happy, and you're maintaining the moisture levels in your soil. So, I'm really, why am I in the woods, you might ask? Because there's a source of mulch here that I tend to use a lot. It's a bit of a task to gather, so it's a good thing to do after like a day at work where you're kind of like, you're frustrated and you want to take your frustrations out. I'm gathering, there's a spot right here where a tree died and fell down and rotted out, so there's all this sort of rotten wood here. So really, it's wood chips, right? And you know, the wood chipper was time, and you're just sort of finishing the task off. Now the advantage of using this here, this one's really rotten, holy smokes. So the advantage of using this is, you know, you say, oh, wood chips, isn't that gonna deplete the nitrogen in your soil? Well, number one, this is already broken down a lot, so a lot of nitrogen's already gone into breaking this down very slowly or out of time, right? The atmosphere is like 70% nitrogen. So, I mean, you know, the rotten wood's gonna, as it's rotting, it requires the nitrogen. The organisms that are breaking down the wood require nitrogen to do that. That's how it gets tied up in the wood, as I understand it. So, you know, it's gathering that, especially, I mean, the tree will rot very slowly when it stands. When it falls to the ground, it's in contact with the soil and all the decaying plant matter on the soil, because, you know, there's leaves and things falling down all the time. So, I mean, this stuff, look at it, it's just broken down. I don't have, you know, superhuman strength, right? This is just totally rotten wood. So you just break it up, smush it up like this, and, you know, in about, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, I think. So it's a bit time consuming, but you know, the good thing about this mulch compared to, like, let's say I filled a bucket like this full of grass clippings. The grass clippings break down very quickly. If I mulch something with this, I really don't have to come back to it for the rest of the season, right? And the good thing about this stuff is that since it's been rotting, it's already got like a lot of, you know, good sort of natural nature stuff in it. So it's really not going to take much from my soil. It's just going to continue to break down. And it's not going to pull nitrogen out of the soil. It might pull some out of the very top surface of the soil, but by this time of the year, because the roots are deep, it's not going to affect them, right? And it's already gathered a lot of nitrogen onto itself because it's like that, right? Something's working on this tree, right? There's microorganisms doing the work of rotting that thing out. That's not just, you know, happening on its own, right? You can't see it, but there's stuff going on in there. And you don't even, I mean, like, these chunks are fairly coarse. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the main goal is to get something on your soil, to slowly break down, and the organisms in the soil break it down over time. And yeah, this time of year, it's sort of ideal. This time of day isn't ideal because the flies are out and they're kind of driving me crazy. One other thing is that, you know, if you live somewhere, let's say in a suburb, or even in, let's say you're lucky enough to, affluent enough to, you know, have a yard in an urban setting, or even let's say you've got a urban garden plot or something like that. So you don't happen to have a forest in your backyard, but you do have a garden of some kind, right? And you're saying, well, Greg, that's wonderful advice, but what the hell am I supposed to do with that? I haven't got access to rotting trees in my backyard. You know, most neighborhoods, even if you don't live in that neighborhood, people, you know, your neighbors, they have a tree in there. They have a tree, the tree dies, the tree falls down. You know, often they'll just cut it up into pieces and put it at the end of the road for the, you know, the municipality to take away. So you can scavenge that way. And I mean, I never understood why people get bent out of shape over a little bit of scavenging. I don't really see anything wrong with it. To me, that's just, I mean, you're being resourceful. You're just being resourceful, right? Someone's throwing something away. Someone has no need for something that's completely useful to you. Why wouldn't you? And if people think there's something wrong with you for doing that, well, there's something wrong with them. Is my opinion. You know, I mean, you're just making the most of a resource that's, you know, you're saving money, you're saving gasoline by not driving all over the place looking for hay or straw or, you know, whatever whatever mulch you saw in a YouTube video that some guy said was the thing, you know, there is no mulch, in my opinion, that's the thing. They're all good. And some mulches have certain properties that are preferable for certain things. You know, I find that if you've got a plant that, you know, really could use a dose of nitrogen, then using grass clippings is, you know, a really good way to do that. You put the grass clippings down about 2 or 3 inches thick, and within, I don't know how many days, but in a number of days, you know, especially with a good rain or a good few waterings, that grass is going to start to break down, and you get a really good rain, it's going to drag all the nutrients from that into the soil. You'll see a big difference. I'm actually, you know, I tend to like doing that with kale around end of June, early July. I like to mulch my kale with grass because it just picks it up. You can see it really take off. You know, today I'm actually going to be mulching some kale with this stuff. So, you know, it's not a, clearly there's no hard, fast rules. And look how quickly this is coming apart. I hope I can pick this up. But yeah, I mean, you can, now this is, you know, heavier than normal right now because we just had a really good rain. So this is really wet stuff. My hands are soaked and it's very dirty. I mean, I'm not, you know, I wore my dirty pants and I'm dressed in the dirty clothes, my play clothes sort of thing, right? Because this is messy work. And we often tend to look at tasks in the garden as all or nothing propositions, like, okay, I got to mulch everything, or I got to do all of this or all of that. And I tend to take the, you know, raindrop on the mountainside approach to these sorts of things, especially when you got a really large garden like mine. At least it's large, you know, for a guy with a full-time job. And you just chip away at stuff. So there's actually beds in my garden where I like to keep everything mulched, but because of COVID-19, I actually didn't get everything properly mulched. I mean, I'm using whatever I can find. Cardboard, paper, you know, anything I can find to get the soil covered so I don't have to water it, because I just can't stand watering my garden. I've almost got a hang up. I feel if I have to water my garden, I've failed. We just got a lot of rain here. We got two really good dumps of rain in a row, and so the soil is nice and wet right now. And I want to get it covered before it dries out, and just, you know, enable it as best as I can to hang on to all that stuff. Boy, this stuff's rotten. Holy smokes! You know, it's on the verge of being soil, really. And I'm surprised that it's not full of ants. I really don't. Usually when you get a rotten tree like this, it's full of ants. Maybe it's the type of tree it was. I think it might have been a pine tree. Don't know. I don't think ants are that fussy. Anyway, I think this is about as much as I can carry. Let's see here. Yeah, yep. So let's go over to the garden and put this down. All right, so here it's a little bit windy. Hopefully the wind's not making too much of a mess of things. But yeah, here I got a piece of garden here where I got some nice kale. And you can see that there's no mulch here, right? So, you know, I had paper here and the paper broke down, and now we're down to nothing. So it's time to get something over this. And I mean, with the good thing about using this stuff is you don't have to put it on too thick. You know, when I'm using a mulch like this, you know, I suppose you're feeding the soil to some extent, but really not that much. What you're really trying to do with this is shade the soil, right? Get the sun off the soil, get it covered like that. So you don't have to go too thick. So you don't have to spread it on super thick. And, you know, I got a few weeds because this wasn't covered, and I'm really not dealing with them. I'm just covering them. I don't know how well this will smother them. I'm not overly optimistic about that, but I don't really care. I'll deal with them, you know, if they amount to anything, I'll deal with them when that happens. But you know, I got X amount of time this evening, and this is the little task that I've set for myself this evening, shooting this video, because I haven't actually shot a video in a while. I know I've been putting up videos regularly, but that's just old footage that I had been meaning to edit and had to use, right? So I actually haven't been out speaking in front of a camera for a week, believe it or not, which is rare for me. Yeah, there's that section. That does not look pretty. I love the look of the wood chips on the soil. Yeah, I'm not crazy about using it for annuals. I've used it, but the problem is for me, I can't get it for free. You know, if you watch that Back to Eden film, he says, oh, they'll just give it to you. They're dying to get rid of it. And yeah, if you're in the right place at the right time, that's true. But if you sort of live off the beaten path like I do, they don't want to drive out here. You got to pay them to come out here. You know, it's not really worth their while, because they drive a big truck and it uses a lot of, you know, these big trucks use a lot of gas and stuff. So, you know, it's just not my wood chip. I can't, perhaps if I could come by them more easily, I'd use them for more things, but I like to use them for walking paths around my property. I find they're very good for suppressing weeds. But I have found using this rotten wood as a mulch to work very well. Aside from it being free, I think it absorbs moisture better than wood chips, because it's a natural sponge. And yeah, if you're getting a light rain every night, it's probably not going to let that rain into the soil. But if you get a really heavy rain, it will. It'll definitely get through. And you know, it's not dense, right? There's a lot of holes, and you know, it's got a good deal of porosity. So the water can trickle through it if you've got a decent rain, or if you're just watering it with a hose, that sort of thing, right? So it definitely works, and it's effective. It's a shame, this kale, it's a nice big beautiful kale, and I broke it earlier today when I was gathering kale for supper, and I broke it. So I'll have to figure out, I'm sure I could find it. I've got kale coming up just about everywhere in my garden. It comes up as practically like a weed, even in my walking path. So I'm sure I can migrate one to this location. But yeah, we got enough, you know, with that little exercise, which didn't take long. I mean, I basically talked you through the whole thing. Probably took 5 minutes to gather this. We got enough to do this. This is about a 4x8 bed, give or take. And there's actually still some left over. And you know, sometimes I get people asking me about pill bugs or sow bugs. You know, when I was a kid, we called them potato bugs, even though I don't think they've got anything to do with potatoes. Anyway, they'll ask me, will the rotten wood bring them around, cause problems with them? I don't really know, because I've never found the sow bugs or pill bugs to be a problem in the garden. I've got them, I see them from time to time in the garden here. I've never really, I think they just eat rotten stuff as far as I know. I don't think they really do anything to your living plants. I guess one other, since I'm just about done this video, actually I got a kale right here that's growing in my walking path. I can show you that. But one other source of mulch that I use this time of year is weeds, right? I got a fairly large property, so every once in a while, if I feel like getting a workout in the morning, I'll just walk around with a bucket and pull every foot-high weed I can see. They're easier to pull. I find most weeds are easier to pull when they're about a foot high. You know, ideally, if you're going to use weeds as a mulch, pull them right before they put out the flowers. There's a certain height for every kind of weed where it's just about to make flowers but hasn't made flowers yet. Because if you put the flowers on your garden, you're getting seeds, right? But yeah, let me show you this kale here. This beautiful kale. And I didn't plant this. It just, I don't know. I had a kale plant go to seed over here. And actually all these nice kale you were looking at while I was doing this mulching, these were all just self-seeded kale. I had a kale go to seed, the seeds fell to the ground. They germinated in a little cluster over there in about a 2x2 area. And I just pulled out the best ones and spaced them out along here. And that's this nice kale garden here. I hadn't intended to grow kale here. I had actually planted something else here. But the thing I planted failed. Epic fail, as the kids say. So, you know, you just roll with the punches like a good boxer and, you know, just plant something else that's going to work. Also, the thing that failed, I didn't have any more of that kind of seed. I ordered them from far away, so it's done. Next year, right? Let me show you this kale. Look at this thing. How about that, eh? So here we got a beautiful, looks like some bird poop on it. We got a beautiful little kale. It's not that big yet, but a beautiful little kale growing out of my sand pathway. You know, it's not, well, it's pretty much the same color green as the other ones. I mean, you got to remember this pathway isn't sand all the way down. This used to be a wood chip pathway right up until last year. This is its second year as a sand pathway. So prior to that, for about 5 years, it had been layer after layer after layer after layer of wood chips. So yeah, there's a lot of organic matter underneath this sand. When you go down about, I don't know, oh geez, probably going to get down 4 inches or so. So this thing just grew in sand initially, but you go down about 4 inches, you get into just black soil, and that's what this thing's roots, you know, was able to reach. But yeah, that's a nice weed. Anyway, that's a nice evening's work. You know, I came out after supper, just a little piece of the garden I wanted to work on this evening. That's it. I'm going to go inside, watch a movie with the kids, and probably fall asleep during the movie. So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.